Hello there, and welcome to my channel. I'm Chase Moser, and this is Moser Movie Reviews. Today, I'm going to be going over the first installment of the TREMORS franchise. So that means the first TREMORS movie with Fred Ward, Kevin Bacon, and Reba McEntire. This movie is so fun. It's so iconic. I grew up watching this with my grandpa. It was definitely one of my favorites. I love a good monster movie. It definitely isn't something that's taken too seriously. I definitely think that the first one is more serious of like the whole franchise, but yeah, it's still fun and it's so interesting and it has a lot of twists and it really told a good story and it's fun and it's kind of like a feel-good movie. When this came out, it was not a very good hit. It actually like bombed at the box office, I think, but it was because of, video service like rental and stuff that it was able to become popular again, and people just kept watching it over and over again, and that made it blow up. It definitely had an impact on pop culture, and I love it so much, and it's referenced and spoofed and mocked in so many other different things. There's even in Scream 4, Kirby has a poster of it on her bedroom wall. I think it's so cool, and I love the evolution of it, and it's something that my grandpa and I would always watch with each other on like Friday nights or something whenever I would spend like the weekends with him. It's definitely a staple of my childhood, and I can't wait to talk about it. So with all of that being said, let's get right into the very first TREMORS. This is an amazing movie about a small town, not even a town, it's just like a community of people living out in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. And it's this, kind of isolated location that sets up a really good story where it's integral to the plot as well, because this isolation is essentially what's going to doom them to their circumstances. So the fact that they are able to make every character likable and interesting, you really care about the community that they have established, you get to learn the layout of the town really very well. And there's a part of me that, grew up in a small place like Ohio that was, very green, and this was a very desert era, and I just it was cool to see the environment and wonder what it would be like if you could live there and be close with your neighbors and stuff. Val and Earl are just two regular people who are trying to make their way when they decide to dip out and become directly tied up into the events of this movie, which ensues the chaos that goes on because they find out very quickly that something that is going on underneath of the surface is this plague of worms. Now, they don't realize that at first. It's kind of cool how serious the movie starts off with this kind of serial killer-esque things, we kind of understand as the audience, but the people in the movie do not. So to see where their minds go and what they're trying to rationalize the events are is very interesting to watch and have them jump from conclusion to conclusion. And it's really interesting the way that they hold back with the death scenes and the showing of the monsters, the way that they do the pacing. It's supposed to make it intense. I really like how it's slowly unveiled and revealed. At first, we think the little snakes are a part of, the whole problem. How many of them are there? There could be hundreds, thousands, because how could they do this much damage? And there's so many scenes where there are so many iconic Tremor moments that are happening right here in this first one that are establishing what this movie is and what the tropes are and how to have a formula and a DNA to this specific IP. It does it very well, and it's so awesome and scary, and it's really cool that whenever they figure out that it's one giant subterranean monster, that it ends up changing the whole narrative of the story, and they figure out there's multiple of them. I love the science student, Rhonda LeBeck, she's a main character. She's probably the driving point of this because she knows what's going on. This movie starts with her putting in new machines or checking the machines that the school has up there. She knows how to operate a situation. She's definitely a great woman to have in this circumstance, and she's a great final girl. I would love to have her on my side and in my team. There is nothing like this first movie. It is quite iconic. I definitely love where the franchise goes, but it would have been cool to see some of these other people back too. I love how menacing this movie does make the franchise start off. It does start off with a kick. And this was the first movie, and I think the only movie of the franchise to be in theaters. So it was really cool to think that there were a few people who actually got to experience this that way. So it probably was really awesome to watch that. The graboid monsters have always been some of my favorites, especially because of growing up with them, and they're just so cool and scary. And I used to think about what it would be like if ever I was surviving that situation, or I would be in school daydreaming and just praying that I didn't have to take this test or finish this afternoon, and that one would just happen to be real and break up out of the middle of the nowhere and have chaos. I used to fantasize about things like that. I know that sounds weird, but like I did. I definitely don't think they had any idea of what was to be in store whenever they were making this first movie. If anybody would have told them that there'd be 7 in total, they would probably be like, what? And there's a TV series, which is one of my favorite parts of the franchise. I think that it's really awesome how they were able to progress, and I don't think anyone knew the exact magic that they had, which is really very awesome because they were working hard back then just to make a good movie, and it really paid off, and it holds up today still. It's really interesting how they hunt by sound and all of the little obstacles that these characters have to go through to get out of the situations to avoid stepping on the floor, like the pole vaulting with the boulders, being up on the roofs of these buildings, and there are very few buildings. They move through the sand and stuff, so there's either got to be something you have to stand on or a rock to be able to climb on, or you're pretty much a target for this thing. And it's so scary to think about how vulnerable you are to its playing field and its playing ground, because it's showing up in your environment and taking the power away from you. One of my favorite parts definitely is whenever it shows up in like the town by the market and like gets all the people, and she gets her legs caught up in like the wire and it breaks through the floor of the store. There are a couple of deaths that go on, and of course it's one of the best things ever because it's the pacing that's perfect, and every time that someone goes, you know it's going to happen, but you feel like it's gut-wrenching because they've established them so well. Burt Gummer is definitely one of my favorite characters, and he did not have a big part in this movie, and he still lays his impact, and it's so crazy that he comes back into every other installment and pretty much takes over as the main character, and rightfully so when you're watching them, because he is enticing in every single scene. And this first movie just shows you how good he is, and it's such a fun aspect of him to see like where he starts off at. When it finally comes down to getting around to the finale and trying to beat these last couple of monsters, it's so interesting because you don't know how they're going to pull it off and how they're going to outsmart them, because these creatures have been proven to start learning and growing as well along with the people. So it makes for a battle that keeps elevating. They eventually get to the point where they're trying to get up to the Solid Rock Mountains by taking a bulldozer, because they can't necessarily take that down. And they come up with a way around that and strand them out in the middle of nowhere. It's in these scenes that we're getting to see the characters think on their feet. We get to see them prevail. We get to see them stressed and scared. There's some of the best character moments there. They not always get along at the same time, so there's a lot of interesting parts to watch, and it makes for so many different vibes going around into the scene, and so many things to care about, and so many goals that you want for the outcome. Having them band together and take their frustrations out and learning how to use their tactics together to overcome and outsmart their situation was so perfect, because if it wasn't for them coming up with the different things together, they might not have taken what they've learned so far and put it to use. And it's very great the way they were able to use the smarts and the sound waves and how the noise works for the worms and everything, just to like push it over the cliff and make it such a satisfying ending. You feel happy for these characters, you're glad they're out of the situation, and you definitely feel like there's that payoff, and you know that they're gone, and there's that satisfactory feeling. And these characters worked hard to get out of their situation. It wasn't handed to them, so it felt like it was there. It felt like the payoff was worth it. And you're happy for them to go back to their normal existence. You're happy for, Kevin Bacon's character to get the girl, and it does feel like a very good movie, even though there's a lot of gruesome deaths sometimes, but there is comedy, and it does have a fun aspect and vibe to it. It has a great rewatchability factor, and I definitely love the animatronics. It really speaks to the time, because even though the later franchise does do the CGI and it looks good for what CGI could be, I really miss whenever they had the puppets and like the big scaled, real versions of the monsters where the actors interact with. That's just kind of what makes it so cool and realistic and believable and a staple of its time, and I really appreciate that. It's what makes it so high in its regards, so that's such a fun aspect of this movie as well. I've always been a little bit afraid that these monsters would come and get me, or that they might be a little bit real, so that's so cool that it has that effect to be able to have that on me. Obviously, as I've grown up, that's gone away, but like being a young person and watching this was just, like I said, something fun to do on a Saturday night, and it gave me and my grandpa conversation, and there was just a lot of fun things to do with it. One of my favorite aspects about this movie is how they handle the creature itself. I like how they use practical effects. I like how they show the ground moving. I like whenever it comes up out of the ground. The way that the creature is designed is so cool. The little snake-like tongues are so interesting. I've never really seen anything like this still to this day. It's never really been done or duplicated, recopied, or remade at all. I don't think it needs to. I really love this movie for what it is. I really like the way that their teeth are, the way that their beaks are, the way that they're shaped and designed. And they actually kind of do a little bit of a redesign as they go further into the franchise. Those are explained and they do make sense as it goes on because of where they are into the environment, and each species is different, just like how there's different species of birds and bugs and dogs and yada yada yada. But specifically when you're right here in this first installment, this desert standalone movie, if it never had any sequels, is really cool and it's so good, and I definitely think that it deserves a lot of appreciation, and it's got a lot of star power too, you know. These people are able to hold their own up against something that is so terrifying, so it definitely makes for a great scene to watch no matter what scene you're watching. And it's one of those movies where if it's on the movie channel, you could throw it on and pick it up at any moment and have a good time with it. And I really think that one of the testaments to that is the creatures themselves, because of how, you know, of how much of a threat they are, how menacing. And if they weren't a problem, then the characters wouldn't be in a real situation. There wouldn't be anything to care about. You wouldn't want to know what the outcome is. And they handle that and the people and the situation and the characters and the creatures, everything so well. And so that's one of my favorite parts of this movie, is something that kind of applies to the whole movie and the whole aspect of itself in and of itself. So yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. I love this franchise. I can't wait to go over more. Those are my thoughts, and I hope you agree with them, or I hope you like them. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Let me know what your favorite parts are, and when did you discover this movie? You know, I discovered it, like I said, very young, and was always watching it a lot growing up. I definitely think it's an iconic monster movie. It holds up very well as a parallel to Jaws, but it was also supposed to be kind of a spoof. So I think it's definitely fun, something I'm glad to have in my collection. I am really interested to see the creature evolve over my, reviews. I love giving my input on that. So yeah, let me know what you think about the graboids, and just, what do you think about Kevin Bacon's character? Do you think he should have been in some of the other sequels? Just all of that good stuff down below. Make sure to check out some of my other videos. I've done a bunch of different genres and like location visits, things like that, reactions, and I live stream with my friends or myself sometimes, so check that out. And also my community tab, because I post fun pictures, polls, questions. It's a really good way to interact with me and all of that good stuff. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye.